Hello, everybody. Here I am again to yap about something that I enjoy. Some of you may know I have a video on here about Disney's Descendants versus Zombies, I think it was, or something of that nature. I talked about the differences between the film franchises. They're both DCOMs, which is Disney Channel original movie, and they're both musicals, and they both have kind of themes of Descendants is more like the theme of like good versus evil and how love can transform a person's life, and also like still being like yourself, but yourself brand new, right? And Zombies is more like racism is bad, classism is bad, and things like that, but like with zombies and really fantastical monsters. So I talked about the two different franchises and why I prefer Descendants over Zombies because I think Zombies gets really repetitive over time. I really do like the actors. I really do like some of the movies, but overall it's a very repetitive theme. Like literally the theme is the same in every single film. And the last or the most recent movie that came out had a song that I really hated. I think it was just a really, really bad song. The lyrically, it just said some things that I personally don't agree with at all. So, I kind of am like, done with that franchise. I don't know if I'll watch the next one. If I do, I'll watch it with much caution. But I would say that the Zombies franchise is not worth watching, whereas the Descendants one still is. Now, the first three films came out, and during at the end of the first one, some period of time after the third film, I should say, one of the actors passed away tragically and suddenly, and so the original cast decided that they did not want to go forward without their integral cast member because it was really the four main characters were Mal, Evie, Carlos, and Jay. And Carlos, the boy who played Carlos, he passed away, and it would have been wrong. And I totally agree with their choice. It would have been wrong to go forward without him being there because they would have had to make up some reason that he wasn't there anymore, and that would have been really, really sad. So I'm glad that they didn't do that. But obviously, the franchise still had a lot of possibilities. And so it rebooted a few years later with a new leading cast. And it was called The Rise of Red. I keep calling it Red Rising, but that's a book by Pierce Brown, which I hate, by the way. So no, but it's called Descendants: The Rise of Red, and The Rise of Red focuses on the Queen of Hearts' daughter, Red, and it kind of follows the same themes of the original, which I'm happy about. But there's a lot of differences that are also really interesting that I especially noted in this newest film. So. Uh, Descendants Wicked Wonderland has since come out very recently, and I loved it. By the way, it was so much fun. The music was great. I'm telling you, after like the first movie was pretty good, but they always ramp up the music by the next one, and I loved it so much. Um, but I also noted a lot of things that seem to be continually happening. So I actually have notes. We'll see if I pay attention to any of the notes that I wrote, though. I might just yap. But so I'll talk a little bit about the first one first. So Red, in The Rise of Red, she is given an invitation to come to Oridon Prep, which is the school in the good kids world. Okay, Wonderland has been cut off. So I guess at the end of the third film, the Isle of the Lost was open at least for a period. I don't think it remained open, at least according to this more recent film that came out, but it was open and people were allowed to come out so that they could have a second chance of life, right? And I mean, the original thing was that they let some of the children come out to have a second chance of life, but then eventually they kind of just opened doors. So, whatever. Which I don't think is a great idea because there are some villains that are genuinely still villains. So, intriguing idea, but probably dumb, which is probably why they closed it again. But the Wonderland was different. They basically blocked off access to Wonderland. Like, there's a place that you can go like a tunnel you can go through, and they blocked off access to Wonderland. But then they decided to invite Red to come, and so they opened it, and this also allowed the Red Queen to come out. And in doing so, she, of course, immediately decides to take over Ordon and is threatening Cinderella specifically because Cinderella and the Queen of Hearts used to be friends back in the olden days when they went to Ordon Prep or whatever it was called, Merlin Academy or something. I can't remember. Um, so they meet, and she says, "Offer their head," and then Little Miss Red, who has this special pocket watch given to her by the Mad Hatter, who is her only friend in Wonderland, the only person who actually cares about her. She uses that pocket watch accidentally, and they end up going back in time to the time when her mom and Cinderella were young children. And Chloe, who is Cinderella's daughter, ends up going with her. And Chloe and Red do not get along. Initially, they're just like, okay, we have to figure this out. We have to go back. We have to go save our moms, or I have to go save my mom because Cinderella's in danger. And Red wants to find a way to keep her mom from turning evil. So they find out that the reason why the Queen of Hearts went evil was some horrific prank. I don't know if you want to call it a prank, something terrible. I mean, they call it a prank, but I think to turn evil, there has to be more than one thing that happens, you know. But anyway, it initially started with some big prank that happened during this like prom event. They call it castle coming, but you know, it's like homecoming. Um, and so during that, the villains of that time played a huge prank on her, totally humiliated her, and I guess she went evil from then on. So they want to stop that from happening, and also because they assume that doing so will make the Queen of Hearts good, but also will make sure that Cinderella never gets her head cut off. Okay. So that's what they do. So, and they find, I mean, there's some great music. My favorite song in this one is Life is Sweeter, which is sung by the Queen of Hearts. Her name's Bridget for some reason. I don't know why, but anyway, her name, the Queen of Hearts, when she was younger, she sings this whole song about how being sweeter is better than being mean, and that's how you know, make friends, and you know, all this stuff. It's very, it's like, it's a highlight, okay? And so they find there are five villains. A couple of them are new. Some of them are throwbacks. Well, I guess three of them are throwbacks. Two of them are invented. But so you have Hades, Maleficent, and Hook as youngsters, and then you have Morgie, who is I think Morgana Le Fay's son, which is so beyond random. And he's supposed to be like a shapeshifter, I think, but you never see him do any of that, which is really a shame. I really would have loved to have seen more from Morgie because he seemed like a really interesting villain. And I mean, he was more of like a peon, like he kind of just followed all the other bigger villains around, but like I would have liked to have seen him do something. That's my only complaint with the newer films is that I feel like there's so much they bring up these characters, but they make them so secondary that you don't see them do anything, but they actually would be really interesting if they did more with them. And unfortunately, since this is like a timeline thing, they don't ever come back. But anyway, and then you have Ursula's baby sister. Oh my gosh, what's her name? Ula? Oh my gosh, I can't remember. Anyway, so you have Ursula's baby sister as well, who is also like a character that technically doesn't exist, but anyway. So then you have this squad, and they work hard on trying to ruin Bridget's life, and the other squad, or squad, I guess, well, Red and Chloe make sure that doesn't happen, and they succeed. So by the time they get back to the right timeline, they find that all is well. The Queen of Hearts is kind, Cinderella is safe, and their lives are changed. So that immediately leads into the next film. The film starts exactly where we left off. Essentially, you see Chloe and Red, they hide the pocket watch so no one can find it, and then they go back to their lives expecting everything's going to be great. But uh-oh, big consequences. Okay. So, first of all, this film starts with the most banger song ever. It's called Perfect Princess. I have not been able to stop singing it. I freaking love it. I love because like they released the music video a few days before the actual film came out. I couldn't stop watching it. I was like, oh my gosh, why is this so much fun? Because it's such a big musical number. And I have such a thing for huge musical numbers because I love watching like watching it over and over again and seeing how this character dances or what this character's role is or the expression on that character or like just even seeing the whole group dance together, like oh my gosh, it's so good. The lyrics are really fun. The dance is great. You get an introduction to the villain kids right away. It's amazing. Okay, I am chef's kiss astounded by that. But it's interesting to me, the villain kids, and I think I'll touch on this first. So initially in the original three films, or at least in the first one anyway, the whole thing is that the kids are so intent on impressing their parents. They want, especially Mal, she wants to be just like her mom. Okay, she wants to be her mom to approve of her. She wants to do what her mom says, and that's what leads them to almost destroying Oridon and releasing all the villains, including their parents, to take over Oridon and destroy it. But the whole thing is, through their time in Oridon, they make friends. They realize that love is a possibility for them. They realize that helping other people and working on a team is like way more fun than being alone and sabotaging everyone. Like they realize that goodness is actually wonderful, and it transforms them. And in the end, they are unable and unwilling to do evil. Like she breaks down, and I've talked about that before. Like she's like, I want to be good, and she's like crying her eyes out, and so she ends up defeating her mother. And Carlos so poignantly says that good is stronger than evil. And come on, that theme is so amazing. But that's not really the point. The point is mainly that the villain kids initially want to be like their parents. But in the newer franchise or the newer iterations, that's not the case at all. So Red wants nothing to be like her mother. She wants to be loved by her mother, but she doesn't want to be anything like her. And that's very clear all throughout the different songs that are sung. And like there's one song where it's called The Fight of Our Lives. It's Chloe and Red are fighting to see which way they're going to go, essentially. And she says, Chloe says, how can I trust you? Your mom just staged a violent coup. Sorry, of course. And she says something about how, you know, I knew my mom was wrong. Like I can't remember exactly how she words it. I can't remember the lyrics exactly, but she knew that what her mom did was wrong and she doesn't want to be anything like her. And that's consistent throughout. Um, and why she wants her mom to be good, right? So it's mainly that these villain children want to be loved, which is true for the originals, but they want to be loved. But unlike the originals, they think that the way that they will be loved is if they emulate their parents and become like them. Whereas these kids don't seem to believe that at all. They want to go the opposite direction. They don't want to be anything like their parents, and they're willing to risk that love for that. Or in Red's case, she wants to change the timeline, which is an insane thing to do, but she wants to change the timeline. But you see, even in this newer movie, that probably the only one that wants to be, or even mentions that she wants to be like her parent, is Hazel Hook, which I'm going to talk more about Hazel because she's an interesting character. But Hazel Hook is the only one who mentions that she actually cares about what her dad taught her, and which is that you trust number one and that's it, which is not a great lesson. But she's like, well, I've never let me down. And I'm like, oh girl, oh girl. But anyway, so you have Hazel Hook, who actually seems to care and wants to be like her parent, but Max Hatter does not want to be like anything like Maddox Hatter, who is Mad Hatter. He doesn't want to be anything like his dad. In fact, he's very upset at his dad and he wants to do everything to kind of prove that he's nothing like him. And so it's very similar to Red. And well, I guess the rest, I don't know. There's Felix Facilier. He doesn't seem to say anything either way, but he doesn't seem like a villain at all to me. He's certainly not scary like his dad. And then you have the Smees, and the Smees, I'm going to go into the Smees. I love the Smees, but I'm going to go into them a little bit. So anyway, I just thought that was interesting that Red and Max specifically who are more of the leading VK kids, are really nothing like the VK kids of the originals. They really don't want anything to be like their parents. But it's like, do they want to be good? I don't know. They just want to be loved. And I think that kind of means that they want to be good. So it's interesting. I am not quite sure, but that was a thought. So, in that huge, big opening number, we also get introduced to a lot of other characters. We get introduced to Robbie Hood. Insane. I freaking love having Robin Hood. Like, come on, yes. And Luis Madrigal. So we have Luis's son, Luis. Um, first of all, I was really excited because I thought they would kind of be like Carlos and Jay, where they would integrate into the group with Chloe and Red and become like the quartet, if you will. But that's not seeming to be the case that it was going. Certainly didn't happen in this film anyway, but it was cool. And then of course you have the introduction to the main squad of the villain kids, because we can't have the villains of the past. So who knows what happened to them? So we have the current villain kids, which is Hazel Hook, Squirmy Smee, and Squeaky Smee. They're twins, and Felix Facilier and Max Hatter. And we did see Squirmy and Squeaky in the end of the third Descendants film. They were actually there, but I'm not sure that they're supposed to be the same characters. And given the timeline shift, I mean, anything could be anything at this point. So they at least they have that going for them, and maybe that's what they wanted. I don't know. It's interesting because you also have like, so we had a Charming, like a Cinderella's son in the original Descendants franchise. His name was Chad Charming, and he was kind of a loser. But he doesn't exist anymore. It's just Chloe now, and I'm like, well, they could totally have erased Chad at this point. I mean, he's not mentioned anyway, but now he really could be erased because of the timeline thing. And same thing with Harry Hook. We had Harry Hook in the original franchise. Now we have Hazel. I mean, Harry could not exist anymore. Who can say? And also we had a Facilier too. I don't remember what her name was, but we had a Facilier. She was a little girl though, and she's, so it's interesting that it seems to some degree that they are, you know things in, you know even though all the characters are different, we still have the fairy godmother who consistently comes back. In the first Red movie, we had Uma here, so like we are in the same world to some degree, but like things have also changed because of the timeline shift, I'm sure, but also like any siblings are just completely unmentioned. So it's like, it's kind of a shame. I feel like they should play off of that, but whatever. Anyway, so we have Robbie Hood and we have Luis Madrigal. I love adding that they were adding new characters, especially one from a more recent film, because I love Encanto, so I was super excited. Um, but Robbie Hood deserved better. He was like a secondary character, if you will, which I thought was a shame because I really liked him and I would have liked to see more from him. But I'm grateful that he's there, and I'm hoping in the next film we'll see more from him. Now I'm gonna go off of notes because I'm gonna just yap in a circle. Uh, so in the first song, Perfect Princess, the Smees have a harmony part. Just the villains are like being like, we don't like, oh, Perfect Princess, blah, blah, blah. But the Smees have a harmony part, and it is insane. And I can't remember the names of the actual boys that play the Smees, but I wish we had seen more from them. Like the only other times that they sing are in group numbers when they're just like ensemble voices. And I would have loved to have heard more harmonies from them because that harmony was like insane, dude. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. It was so good. And honestly, like the Smees kind of like got to me a little bit because I feel like they made them so stupid. And like this Smee, Mr. Smee, Captain Hook's Mr. Smee, is not actually that stupid. Like, he's bumbling for sure, but he's not an idiot. Like, he's actually pretty smart and he knows when to get going. Like, he knows how to get out of a spot, and just kind of like whatever. So I was kind of disappointed to see that they were like just truly just there for comic relief and not really to like, I mean, they did add to the show because of comic relief, I guess, but like, I just wish there had been more to them because I think that they would have been really, really even more fun if they had been a little bit more intelligent. Like, they made them really stupid for some reason. But I did like that we got to see them interacting with Hazel because it's like Captain Hook and Smee. So, like, that's a good energy. I love that. Oh, yes. Um, I wrote this note. Why have the Madrigals backtracked on loving the family, not the gifts? So Luis Madrigal at some point mentions that, like, what's important about him is his strength and that he's never really gotten, like, no one's ever asked him what he wanted out of life. Like, what's important is that he's able to be the strong man, right? And live up to his mom's, you know, fame kind of a thing. Not quite in those words, but that's the energy that I got. And I was like, wait a second. At the end of Encanto, literally the whole thing was that, like, they are loved for who they are, not because of the gifts they have. Why have we lost that along the way somewhere? And I know they're just trying to give him a little bit, like, some something like to, maybe feel for him or something, or just to give him kind of some drama in his life that maybe he can relate to Red a little bit more because if yeah, they're the new love interest. Um, but it was just kind of weird to me. I was like, for sure, like that shouldn't be the case anymore. But I mean, you know what? Also, sometimes people can take things on that no one put on them, so maybe that's the case. I don't know. But I find it very hard to believe that Louisa would not be very concerned for her children all the time. Okay, I think she would be very mindful that they uh let their emotions flow. All right. So that was just something that I noticed that I thought was kind of silly. Um Mad Hatter is great. His song is insane. Okay, he has a song called I think it's called Wicked Wonderland. Like he has like the title song, okay? And it is Leonardo Nam is the name of the man who plays Mad Hatter. Like so good. The way he sings it, the inflection throughout the song, so good. He makes a perfect Mad Hatter in my opinion. Max's motivations are sad, but he only knows how to handle things like a villain. Okay. So essentially, initially when he decides to go to Wonderland is because he hears that his dad has captured the Queen of Hearts, which is how this whole bad thing started. The Queen of Hearts gets captured by the Mad Hatter, and they all decide to go, all the kids decide to go to Wonderland to stop him. And Max's motivation is that he doesn't want to get lumped in with his dad because that's what keeps happening. Everybody thinks he's evil because of his dad. Mind you, he also pickpockets people and does things that are bad and hangs out with the VK. So like, you know, but he also did grow up on the Isle of the Lost in this timeline. His dad was banished to the Isle of the Lost, as was he. So he grew up in an unloving household surrounded by other villains and he had a bad time. So there's a reason why he does what he does because he doesn't know any better. But he also does know that he doesn't want to be like his dad. So here again, we see that. So that's his main motivation is to not be like his dad. And oddly enough, the other VKs very much support him, which I think is really interesting. Like no, none of them seem to look up to Mad Hatter as like their hero of sorts, right? Even though they still resort to doing villain things to solve problems. So it's kind of like it doesn't fully make sense to me why. I mean, I guess I would understand that like maybe the other villain kids want their dad to be in charge. I don't know, and they think Mad Hatter's pretty unhinged, so like sure, but like it's interesting that there's some sort of like hierarchy for like, well, we can be evil, but like we can pickpocket and lie and do crime, minimal crime, but if you get to big crime, then we're not in on that. Like it's just interesting. But I like Max. I like Max a lot. Hazel is cool, but no accent, and why? So throughout the film franchise, any Hook that has been in the film franchise, from Harry Hook to actual Captain Hook, have actually had the accent that Captain Hook is known for. And obviously, it makes sense for Captain Hook, but Harry Hook, who is also his child, also had an accent. So it's interesting that Hazel has none. She just has a plain old American accent. And I'm somewhat disappointed about that because I think it makes her like not it's harder to pin her as a Hook other than them telling us that she is because she has no accent. And I mean, I guess the Smees don't either, but they don't talk as much, so it doesn't really matter to me. Plus, Mr. Smee, like whatever, you know. But Captain Hook has a very like notable accent, and I would have liked to have seen that for Hazel, and I think it's weird that they didn't. But I also think that this film franchise cares a lot less about the more detailed things, like this iteration, I should say, not like the originals. I'm not saying the first three were imperfect or weren't perfect or whatever I'm trying to say. They had little things that I would be like, huh, I wonder why they chose to do it that way. But I feel like they're not as detail oriented with things like accents and stuff, which I think is kind of a shame because why? Cinderella is real smart and wants to protect the kids, to be honest, but the kids are wild. Okay. I think this is because so initially Chloe and Red go to Cinderella to ask for help to save the Queen of Hearts. And she's like, no, we have to follow protocols. Like Cinderella has become very serious business about following the rules to even at the expense of somebody else, and the kids end up going on their own because they're like, no, we don't have time, Mad Hatter doesn't play by the rules, etc. and Max goes with them also because he's like, well, I know he doesn't play by the rules, and I know I know how his mind works, so that's kind of why he goes as well. Um, but I honestly kind of side with Cinderella in that I feel like following the rules is often the better choice, but that's what it is. The kids are wild. Oh, and then I wrote this note, which I've already talked about, but Max doesn't want to be like his dad, very different from the original Descendants. We already talked about that. Red is having to decide if she is a VK or an HK, a villain kid or a hero kid. Sort of like Mal from Descendants 2. So, I thought that this film was kind of Descendants 2 and Descendants 3 wrapped into one. And I'll explain that because I also put that in this note, but I just didn't say it yet. But essentially, in Descendants 2, Mal tries to conform to like the perfect princess aesthetic. Like, she blondes her hair and she tries to wear all the pink fluffy dresses and do everything perfectly, but she's actually not doing it perfectly. She's often using spells to kind of like read fast enough to get all of her studying done or make a meal with magic or whatever. Like, she's trying to do all of these things, and in the end she breaks. She like has a breakdown about it, and she's like, no, I'm just a villain, like I don't belong here, I can never be like these people. And she goes back to the Isle, and then they go and get her and save her and stuff like that. And then she realizes that it's about what's inside. Like, the outside doesn't matter. Like, your heart has been changed by good, and that's what you are. Like, now you are not a villain anymore, and you don't have to go back there just because you have a different like style to you, or you're a little rougher around the edges. Like, you don't have to, like, you are changed. And of course we continue to change, but like, as we learn more and we grow more, but like, you the things that you've been through that make you maybe somebody who is a little bit more street smart or a little bit more edgy or whatever, those things about you are just part of your personality, and it's okay because you went through hard things. And um it shouldn't bring a hardness to you, but it might make you see the world differently, and that's okay. And so that's kind of what she goes through. And Red is experiencing that as well, where she's not sure where she fits in. Because of the new timeline that they've made, she's actually only seen as a hero kid. And she's not fully comfortable with that because she's only known life as a villain up until this point. And of course, she has been changed by all the love that has surrounded her, and of course, Chloe's friendship with her. But and she wants to be good, but she wants to do things the villain way. Like, she's used to kind of being a little more sneaky, a little more underhanded, maybe, all this stuff. And for her, this has just happened. Like, this whole change has just happened, essentially. So the fact that she's going through this arc, I think, makes perfect sense because she doesn't know any other way to be. She's always been having to defend and protect herself, so she's not used to any other way of being. So, um, I think it's good that they have this character moment for her, for sure. Um, and then Chloe's arc in the story is like Audrey from Descendants 3. So Descendants 3 is basically one of the hero kids, or the kids from Oridon. Her name's Audrey. She's Aurora's daughter. She ends up um, going evil, essentially, and taking Maleficent's rod, and it transforms her into an evil villain, because she's feeling lonely, she's feeling abandoned, and these emotions have led her down a dark road. And Chloe experiences that same thing. And the thing is, as I watched this, at first I thought Chloe was overacting, but then I watched the film again and I'm like, Chloe is consistently talking to Red about feeling ignored, about because she's not listening to her when she gives her a plan to try to help them get through Wonderland, and Red keeps siding with the villain kids. And so Chloe expresses that she's not being heard, that she feels unwanted and she feels used by Red. And Red just keeps brushing her off until finally she snaps. And Max takes advantage of that. And and she transforms with the use of an object into like her evil self. It totally brainwashed her. So I thought that was interesting. And then Hatter does not care about his kid, but Max understands how his mind works because he has suffered under his care. So at one point, when all the kids are in Wonderland trying to save the Queen of Hearts, which also, it's just interesting that all the villain kids went along with that. Like, I know they were kind of following Max, but tea also. I'm just so curious about the motivations of these kids. I don't fully understand. I understood more the villain kids in the first three movies. These villain kids seem to be less villain kids, to be honest, and more just kids that are maybe lost and a little wayward, and they ultimately want to do good, but they just don't really trust anybody. So it's just interesting. Um, but anyway, at one point, Hatter is literally doing all of these tricks to try to like stop or trap the children, and his son is right in there with him. And Max says how like his dad's mind is twisted, and Felix is like, "Well, yeah, he's your dad, so it makes sense. You're his kid." And I'm like, I don't. I mean, Max definitely at the end you can see some of more of that twistedness, but like you don't really see that until the very end. So I'm like, okay, I'm sure he is, sure he is, Pink is funny and kind, but where is the dad? So in this timeline, Pink exists, which is Red's younger sister. Very creative naming, love to see it. Um, but I was so like, which leads me to believe, of course, that the Queen of Hearts being more loving, with her husband, had another child, makes sense. But where is the King of Hearts? Like, I'm just so curious where the King of Hearts is because he doesn't make an appearance. And like it's interesting because for the villain kids, that's very normal that they just don't have another parent. They're a single parent family. That's very, aside from Mal, even though she was only raised by her mother. We find out that she has a dad. We find out who her dad is. But all most of the hero kids seem to have both parents just fine. But the villain kids don't. And but even after like we get into the hero timeline for Red and Pink exists, we still don't know where the dad is. So I'm just like, where's the dad? Just a thought. Um, then this note says these VKs seem to genuinely care about each other. And that's like anytime something bad happens and they find each other again, they are all hugs and happy to see each other. And I'm not saying we didn't see that with the first three films, obviously, but in the first film, they were a lot more hesitant and very unemotional. And even then, some of them, like Jay, kind of carry that throughout because that's just his character. But um, it's just interesting to me how much these kids seem to genuinely care about each other. And like Hazel Hook says that she doesn't care about the Smees, like, well, not doesn't care, but she says, they're my friends, but like they actually just work for me, kind of a thing, which like makes sense for Hook and the Smees. But like at the same time, I'm kind of just like, you guys are a bunch of softies. You are not the VKs of old, which I don't mind, but like it's just interesting that they don't seem to be evil. Romance between Red and Luis is cute. I liked it. It was nice. I like that we're actually getting a romance because we didn't have that in the first one, obviously. And so I think it is cute, and I want to see that continue to flourish. Um, oh, I think I already talked about this, but I said they made the Smees too dumb. Smee is this bumbling character, but he's actually pretty smart. I did say that. Felix and Robbie bonding over trauma. So Felix Facilier and Robbie Hood everybody ends up getting separated at one point in Wonderland, but the core group end up coming back together pretty quickly. But Robbie and Felix end up in the ocean of tears in a teacup for a long time, and they get traumatized. And then they obviously find the rest of the group eventually, and they bonded over that because at one point they get shrunk down to the teeny tiny size to play on a chessboard, and Robbie gets like flung out of the chessboard, and I think a couple other characters do as well. I think it might be Felix and Squirmy Smee that end up getting knocked off the board as well. But Robbie's the first one to go. He gets pinged off the board, and Felix is like, "My dude!" I was like, "Oh, they're besties. Look at that." And the good guys are gonna rub off on them too. We love to see it. It's just interesting how quickly the VKs like care about the HKs too. Like it's just I don't know. It just intrigues me. I'm intrigued. Um, Squeaky Smee, I actually initially called him Tiny Smee because like the Smees are very different heights despite them being twins. There's Tiny Smee and Tall Smee, but I found out their actual names. So Squeaky Smee being ready to fight for Squirmy Smee at one point again during the chess game. It was just so charming to me. Like Squirmy almost gets eaten by an angry flower, and Squeaky comes over and lifts up his fist and he said, "Don't hurt my bro!" And I'm just like, oh, or "Don't hurt my brother," I think is what he said, not bro, but it was just really cute, and I liked it because I love family bonds, okay? And like that doesn't bother me because I think family bonds uh trump like over anything. Like you are always going to have one for your family. You know what I'm saying? You're always going to fight for your family. Max and Chloe, a vibe I want to see continue. So initially, their bond is caused by them both being hurt by Red, and Max actually uses Chloe, so that's not great. But I think that they could actually become like a relationship, and I would actually like to see that happen. I think that would be really cute. At first, I thought it was going to be like Chloe and Robbie and Red and Luis, although I think Red and Robbie makes more sense, but like go off, whatever. Um, but yeah, so I liked it. But anyway, so I don't know if I wrote about it. Did I write about it? Oh no, I did write about it. We'll come to that note later. Um, Red is super mean to Chloe, but she's used to doing things alone, which I also already talked about, so I won't go into that too much. But essentially, again, Chloe comes to her for like the last time, being like, "Hey, you're really ignoring me, and you're being mean to me, and you're being selfish, and all this stuff." And then Red like goes off on her, and it was like, "Whoa, whoa, girl, you have not been listening, okay?" But she is used to doing things alone, not giving her an excuse, but it is a reason. I think it makes sense that she reacts this way, so. Anyway, did we need Brandy and Rita Ora's song? Nah, but also yes, because their voices are insane. So there's a song between Cinderella and Bridget because they're both trapped by the Hatter. Cinderella also gets trapped by the Hatter. And they sing about how they wish they'd kind of been like they want to help their daughters, but they also um, miss being like free young people and whatever. Anyway, I don't know. But I was kind of like this song is feels very unnecessary. Like I think you could cut it and nothing would change. But I do like seeing their friendship. Like that's nice. I'm not saying it's not nice. It's nice. But really what I like is their voices. In freaking sane. Like you can't even be like annoyed that this feels like a filler song. It's so good. So anyway, Queens, go off. Okay, here's where the story really got me, okay? Max realizing he had lived a timeline where his dad loved him, heartbreaking. His anger towards Red is understandable. Like, so essentially, he goes to his dad's house because his dad is holed up in the castle right now with the queens. But he's going to his dad's house to steal one of his inventions to hold it against him to hopefully get his dad to release the Queen of Hearts and Cinderella because he knows that his dad would do anything to get this invention back. But the Cheshire Cat's child named Chessie, who has been causing problems the whole time, of course, ends up manipulating him into looking into this device, which shows like memories or something. I'm not entirely sure, but anyway. So the device shows that everything that his dad had said is true. Like, so his dad saw the how Mad Hatter changed is that the Hatter witnessed Chloe and Red disappearing from Merlin Academy to go back, having changed time. And he saw that and he went crazy trying to find this pocket watch, the time changing pocket watch. And he went crazy, and that's why he got sent to the Isle of the Lost. And that's why, Max never knew a loving father, okay? Because it happened when Mad Hatter was just a teenager that he started going crazy. Um, and so Max sees that through this device. He sees that his dad was changed, that the pocket watch is real, that Red was the reason that everything changed, that the queen had been evil and she was turned good by Red changing time. And then he sees this scene where Mad Hatter is Max is playing chess, and Mad Hatter, his dad, is good, and he says that he's so proud of him and that he loves him. And Chessie the cat reveals then that that was the original timeline. That was how it really was. But Red changed it so that she could have what he had, essentially. And Max is like, I shouldn't have seen that. And he throws the device and totally smashes it. And Chessie's like, well, you did. So now what are you going to do? And of course, he goes crazy. He's furious. He's heartbroken that he had once had a loving father and Red took that away from him. So I understand the motivation, right? And so now he's determined to find the pocket watch and change it back so that he gets back what he had before, which probably wouldn't result in that happening. One has to assume that more bad things would happen by messing with time. But anyway, that's his motivation. And so he tries to figure out what to do because he knows he probably can't get to Red directly. But Chessie ends up being like, well, she's not the only one that knows where the pocket watch is hidden. And then he realizes that Chloe would be the easier one to get, especially since she's already been hurt by Red. So he makes some sort of device that is like a wrist brace thing that has a special gem in it, and I guess it turns her evil. So he ends up going to her, and they have this incredible duet called Heartless. Bruh, it's so good. It's so good. It's so good. It's so good. So, anyway, all of the music is really good in this, I have to say. But he goes to her with this thing. She is wounded and hurt, and she kind of knows she shouldn't use it, but she ends up using it. She has a transformation moment like Audrey, and she goes rogue. She goes evil, and she runs off with Max to go get the thing. And then Red and Luis end up going off to go get it. And we still don't know where Robbie, Felix, or Squirmy Smee are. They're still MIA. They're just lost in Wonderland, I guess, after the chessboard popped them off. Um, and so they end up going to this maze. It's a big, huge garden maze thing. And Chloe reveals that Red hurt her and she's not going to change back. She likes being evil and she wants to be as heartless as Red is, blah, blah, blah. And Max reveals that he knows what she did to him. She knows that she took away his loving father to give herself a loving mother. And so they all go in there, and Red is feeling overwhelmed. She runs in there with Luis to stop them, and ends up Luis gets eaten by the eaten by the foliage because the maze keeps changing, and she feels lost and alone and doesn't know how to stop Chloe. So in the end, she has a memory, which is interesting because she's not used to this timeline, but now memories are starting to come to her, and she has a memory of her and Pink in that garden maze hiding something. And so she goes and she finds they had a little treasure box, and she calls Pink for help, and Pink comes, and she ends up eating they kind of have a moment of bonding, which Red hadn't had up until that point because she thought Pink was annoying, but then she realized how special it was that she had a sister, and they have a really nice duet. It's very pretty. It's not my favorite song, but it's very pretty. And then she eats a piece of one of those cookies that makes you giant. Pink does. And she gets really big, and that helps them to be able to find where Chloe and Max are. And then they come and they stop them there, and they have the pocket watch at that point. And Pink stomps on the ground. The ground gives way to like an underground, like well of some sort. It looks so sick. Like some of the sets in this are really cool. I know a lot of it was CG, but some of the sets were really cool when they did actually do sets. And so then the three of them have a showdown, basically. They've all turned against, well, Red hasn't turned, but Chloe even turns against Max because she knows Max is just using her, and Max is all upset and blah, blah, blah. Eventually, Red is able to get through to Chloe, and she takes off the thing and throws it away, and she goes back to normal, good Chloe. And then they realize that they have to destroy the watch, and Red apologizes to Max because she had no idea what was going to happen to him because of the choices that she made. She realizes that the consequences of what she did was too much, but also that there's no way to be sure that if they went back in time that it would actually change anything. And of course there is probably an ounce of selfishness in there. We have to say that she loves what she has. She loves having a sister, she loves having a good mom, and she doesn't want to lose that, and I think she does acknowledge that, but also that there's no guarantee that if they did go back that it would actually make anything better. And so they end up, Max is not convinced. He tries to steal the pocket watch one more time, but then the whole place starts crumbling. There's like three dragon statues in there, and it almost falls on him, but they end up saving him, and that, I guess, gives him a moment of pause to be like, okay, maybe I can trust them. I don't know. But either way, I think I wrote a note about this. It says, they save Max and he just gives up, LOL. But she promises to help the Hatters and destroys the watch. So that's pretty much how it ends. I mean, obviously they go in there and they go save the queens themselves. Oh, that's when everybody else shows up all together. Also, Squirmy, Smee, and Pink like hug a lot and they dance together in the last dance. So I think that's adorable. Like a Smee and a Pink, that's adorable. Nothing to do with this moment, but Hatter gets caught and everything kind of goes back to good. The Queen does have a moment of off with your head to Mad Hatter, which I thought was interesting that a little bit of the original timeline was leaking into the current timeline. But then she's like, oh, I wonder where that came from. Oh, that's not me. Oh, and I'm just like, oh, gee, what's happening? Well, you can't mess with time, y'all. It's a bad idea. But he gets caught. He's gonna be, Mad Hatter's gonna be in jail. He's not gonna lose his head. And Red promises to help the Hatters once again. And Max seems to think that that's enough. It's so interesting to me how unvillain like, if we're comparing it to the original three, that the actual villain kids are. I'm fine with Red not being like a really intense villain kid because first of all, she was totally isolated from everything. She was just on her own. So really her being more of a loner that is just lonely and sad makes more sense. But the like Max and Hazel and the Smee, well, the Smees, I don't know. I never really saw Mr. Smee as even a villain, you know what I mean? He's just more of a dude that's following the villain around, but he's very unvillain like. He's not scary. So the Smee's not being scary is fine. But Facility's son, like especially since they all presumably grew up on the Isle of the Lost together, I would have expected a lot more like nefariousness from them than we see, especially since Facilia is probably one of the more terrifying villains. Like, I don't really like the Princess and the Frog movie, to be honest with you, but I mean, dude is into like evil stuff. I would have expected a little more scary than him just like playing with cards and doing card tricks. He softens very early on too, and I love the actor, Xavier. I can't remember his last name. I love the actor. I think he does an incredible job, and he's so adorable. But I never once felt intimidated by any of these villains. The only one that seemed to even have, well, Max was a little bit. I could see Max being a little bit more scary. Because he was, especially in the Heartless song, you could see the unhingedness starting to come on. But like I would have expected a little bit more from like Hazel. I mean, you do see a little bit from her in like her dialogues, like that she doesn't, she's like, don't trust anybody else, just trust yourself. I've got a lot of baggage and, I'm a pirate. She's not afraid to swing her little hook around and all that. But, she doesn't give the same kind of villain energy that I would have expected. And I'm not expecting them all to be like the villains of Descendants, the first three films, but I just would have expected them to be a little more intimidating or a little more aggressive or, something. And we just don't see that. And they all kind of become friends very easily with the hero kids. And I'm just very intrigued by that because even like Robbie and Luis, like they don't really bump heads with them very much. Every once in a while, they'll like, especially early on in their time in Wonderland, like they'll say something about like, we can't trust them, blah blah blah. But like it doesn't last. So it's like, it's very interesting to me, but I'm also fine with that. Like this is a different vibe. It has been a longer period of time where the Isle of the Lost has that program, or the Ordon has the program of bringing the children from the Isle of the Lost to Ordon to help give them a new life. And they also had been living in Ordon for a little while longer, presumably. They seem like they've been at school for a while. So it makes sense that maybe their edges have softened at this point, but I'm just very intrigued that they're supposed to be the villain kids. And really, the worst they seem to do is just kind of like be mean to each other and say snarky comments. Other than Max. Max obviously does do some evil stuff. Good for, well, not good for him, bad for him. But he does change in the end. So, anyway, overall, I definitely give it like a 5 out of 5. Like, I truly enjoyed it and I love the music. I feel like the music, again, ramped up fabulously. Obviously, my main complaints were like, I wanted to see more of Robbie. I want to see more of the Smees. I wanted to see more. of Felix, the characters that kind of got shoved off because they had too many characters. So it made sense that they couldn't have all of them all in the scenes all the time. But I hope, because obviously we got a teaser that there is going to be another movie, which we're probably gonna have to wait 2 years for. Oh, it's too long. But we are going to have another film, and since this is not like a back in time, like this is in the current timeline, and presumably this film is going to remain in the current timeline, we should see all of these characters come back. I'm crossing my fingers. So I'm hoping we see more from Robbie and the Smees and Hazel and Luis and Felix and all these characters and Max obviously. Um, but that's still a lot of characters. So I'm assuming none of them are all going to get the spotlight like that, but I would love to see more from the secondary characters, the very secondary characters, because those are the ones that I love the most. Okay. Um, but yeah, I'm very excited to see the next film. I'm very excited to see where this whole franchise goes. If I, live long enough to see it continue to go, or if it decides to continue to go, because obviously it does well for them, and the music is so fun and it's so light, and my main concern is that it's going to lose the core message of like good triumphs over evil every time, and that love is more important than being distrustful and hateful, and being a villain is not it. And I know, like, some of the songs even in the original three were like, oh, it's good to be bad, like those kind of songs. But like, to me, those songs never meant like it was good to be a villain. It was bad more in like the cool sense, you know what I mean? Like, wicked and bad were used more in the sense of like we're the cool kids, not like we're the bad kids. And I don't think the message has been lost, but I'm just a little bit like, I'm always wary of that. Because I don't want that. That's the core of this, that yes, the villain kids, they dress really cool, and maybe they're a little snarky, and maybe they're a little funny, and maybe they're a little like off the chain, off the wall, but like ultimately being good is what's great. And that is probably the only thing that I kind of have seen throughout the franchise that I don't love, is that oftentimes the hero kids are seen as a bit more like ridiculous or naive, or like they don't dress as cool, and like they're not seen as the cool kids, when it's like actually they are the coolest of kids, and good for them not having to, having great parents that help them. And listen, none of us are perfect, and we can all learn, and nobody's good, right? Only God is good, okay? But like, there's nothing wrong with being raised in a healthy environment where you were loved and you experienced good, that. And I don't think that's what they're saying, but it just seems like oftentimes the good kids are seen as kind of the goofball kids, right? Like, they're just, we don't take them too seriously, but the villain kids are really cool. Because like Chloe is really cool, even when she goes through that, experience. And at the end of the movie, she's like, it was kind of fun being bad or something like that. And I'm just like, girl, but you didn't act, if you actually believe that, you wouldn't have wanted to stay that way, right? You know what I mean? But it is also acknowledged, like, even the mom is like, so what was up with that evil Chloe? Like, we don't, no, 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 and she was like, and she's like, don't worry, we won't tell your dad. It's like, okay, well, the poor, stop leaving the dads out of this, please. We need more dads. Y'all need more dads. That's the problem, okay? Maybe not, we need good dads, not the Captain Hook dads. We need good dads. Or the Facilier dads. Okay, there's some bad dads, but we need good dads. Okay, so anyway, it's just the final song I didn't love. I mean, it was very much in the same theme of all the final songs of these franchises, where it's just like, be you, you're unique, da da da. But it was also like kind of being, well, I think ultimately it ended on, we shine the, we want to shine the light, we want to follow the light. But there was like a moment where it's like, you know light only shines in a little bit of darkness or something like that. And I'm like, hold up. Is that what I heard? I don't know if that's the lyric though. I don't know if that's what the lyric was saying. I had to look up a couple of lyrics, but that I didn't look that one up yet. But I had a pause there to be like, hold up. I mean, we all have something that we struggle with in life, but we should never identify with that. um the light is what we want. So as long as that continues to be the theme of these movies, I will continue to enjoy them. And I think that this still had that theme. It was a theme about friendship and love and overcoming evil, and that's what happened, and good won in the end. So like I said, as long as that continues to be the theme, I'm going to continue to enjoy these films. So now that I've yapped about this for a million years, I'm going to stop. Have you watched any of the Descendants movies? Do you like, some people only like the first three and they do not like the newer ones. Do you like the newer ones or do you prefer the originals? I would say at this time, the originals, I don't want to say the originals, the first three are probably still top tier my favorite, but I really am enjoying what they're beginning to build in these films. And I think now that they are in the current timeline that they want to have, because the first one was a little bit of an outlier in that they went back in time and changed things. So the people that were back in time, like the villains in that time, actually put that on pause. I just realized the villains from the old timeline that Red and Co went back to see were absolutely terrifying. So cheers. That's what it was. Um, but they were also in the timeline before, I don't know, maybe the villain kids have softened over time. That's all. But anyway, so yeah, terrifying. Okay, well done. But you know, because of that, obviously they couldn't continue with those characters. But now we're in the current timeline. We have a cast of characters that I think will return. So I'm excited to see them continue to grow together because that's what makes and what made the first three so fun was seeing the characters grow together over time. And so I'm hoping that we get to see that with this rather large cast of core characters. And hopefully we don't lose any, even for the secondary characters. I'm really hoping we don't lose them like Robbie Hood. I'd like to see more from him. But tell me what your favorites are. Do you have a favorite song from the newest movie? Mine is definitely Perfect Princess. Oh my gosh, I could listen to that forever. Yeah, let me know your thoughts about that. So I'm going to stop it right here. Remember that I love you, but Jesus loves you way more. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in him shall not perish, but have everlasting life. Remember that, know that, seek the Lord with all your heart. And yeah, so bye guys.